Oh, recording in progress. Oh, it's took me back out. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so hi everyone. So my name's Charlotte from Healthwatch Bury, and this is our virtual mental health event today, 31st of October. So some little guidelines for our event. We want everyone to be accepting. Everyone is welcome, regardless of race, ethnicity, national origin, religious affiliation, sexual orientation, sex, gender identity, or ability. We want to respect each other's boundaries. So we don't want to make advances or comments on appearance that might make somebody feel uncomfortable. We don't want to be rude. We don't want to intentionally provoke, threaten, or insult anyone. Please. We don't want to flood the chat, so we want to keep the conversation going, but if we send the same comment over and over again, somebody's comment could get lost. So we're asking to just send things once or put your hand up because we can in Zoom. Don't self-promote, sorry. So we're not here for a sales pitch. We want to stay focused on the stream and the topic that's being discussed at the time. And we want to keep it clean, please. So if it's shocking, obscene, vulgar, or inflammatory, we want to leave it out. So what's going to go on today is we're going to have the introduction with me, what we're doing now. Dr. Gita Bhutani is going to come and talk to us a little bit about learning a little bit more about sleep and our sleeping patterns. So look forward to that. And then we've got Big in Mental Health talking, Nicola and Brett. And then we're going to go through some mental health support groups that are in Bury at the moment. So Healthwatch is your local health and social care champion. So we make sure NHS leaders and other decision makers can hear your voice and use your feedback to improve care. We listen to your experiences of using health and social care services and share them with those with the power to make change happen. And we can also provide you with information and advice. So we can support you in ways like signposting to local or online support groups. So later on in the session, we will be going through the mental health support groups that are within Bury. If you need more information about that, there are several ways to contact us, so we will go through them shortly. Information and advice about you or your family members' healthcare. So the same thing, but if it's for somebody that you care about also. And listen to your experiences of using health and social care services in Bury. So these are our contact details: phone, WhatsApp, email, and we do have social media. So if you're not comfortable ringing us, you can just go on one of our social media handles, send us a message, send us an email. Someone will get back to you. And that is it for the introduction today. So thank you all for being here. And I'm going to pass over to Gita. Thank you.
First mistake. Thought I was off mute, but I'm not. So hello, everyone. I'm just going to try and share my screen and just check that share screen and go to, dear, I shouldn't have done that way. Right. No one, come on, stop it. It worked perfectly when we practiced. Okay, so can you see the slides now? Yep, nods all right. So hello again. Now we've got the technical bits right. I'll introduce myself. My name's Gita Bhutani. I'm a clinical psychologist by background. Most of my clinical work is in Lancashire and South Cumbria, where I work in a complex post-traumatic stress disorder service. And quite a lot of the people we see often have difficulties with sleep. And this seemed like an opportunity just to share, hopefully, just a few facts about sleep, a few hints and tips, and perhaps some suggestions if people do want further help, where you might seek that going forward. So that's what we're going to do, probably maybe for the next 20 minutes to 30 minutes. And I can't see chat or questions. So if there is anything, I'll rely on Charlotte either interrupting me or we can pick it up at the end. So that's okay. So moving on. So some of you will know all this anyway, but I just thought it might be interesting to think about some sleep facts which probably apply to many of us. So it's probably no real surprise to many of us, because you'll have heard it before, that we spend about a third of our lives asleep, which is quite a significant amount of time. And I think the other thing is thinking about when, sleep is good for us. And because, we evolved from humans that actually lived in the days before electricity and relied a lot on natural light, then we're kind of used to sleeping at night. because our eyesight's not that great, so we don't tend to be nocturnal. So midnight to 7 seems to be the sort of prime body clock sleeping time. Obviously, people on night shift do have different experiences and had to kind of train themselves to manage that differently. But sleep's absolutely essential. It's quite interesting that humans can survive longer without food than they can without sleep. And I think, you know, occasionally you see people doing kind of fairly extreme things like sort of staying up for several days or weeks or trying to do that. And what you notice is people actually will become quite confused. They can start seeing things, they can feel, you know, they'll start losing weight and they'll really, really struggle. So it's absolutely important. But we do need less sleep as we age, and we do need different types of sleep. And I'll go on to explain a little bit more about that. The other thing that happens when we don't get decent sleep is stress. So stress reduces the amount of deep sleep that we experience. And I'll explain a little bit more about deep sleep. And also our memory suffers when you persistently lack sleep. And that can be, you know, if you're a bit stressed, thinking, oh, I've got to do this tomorrow, I've got to do that tomorrow, you don't sleep well. And sometimes you're a bit more forgetful than you used to be. And I don't know, you know, for those of you that have had to look after babies and small children, you can feel a bit kind of stressed, memory suffered, because of the challenges of actually looking after small children who don't sleep as well as perhaps you did. So, what do we know about the stages of sleep? So the way we kind of write these things down is that we can have a wakefulness stage, which is the periods of being awake. We all wake up from time to time during the night, even if we have good sleep. Sometimes we just don't even notice, you know, it's fleeting. But other times we may wake up or something does wake us up. But I'm going to start at the bottom. Just probably should have written the slide differently, but then the numbers wouldn't have worked. So stages sort of 3 and 4 is the deepest part of our sleep, when we kind of get into our heart rate drops, we're probably much stiller, and it tends to be during the sort of first part of the night or the first third of the night. We get less of that as we get older, but this sleep's really important because it seems to be the time when our bodies kind of repair ourselves and we kind of get more benefit from just that level of stopping. And, you know, we're not as active in our sleep. However, it's still really important that we get light sleep. So we kind of get the light sleep, stage 2 light sleep. It's the largest proportion of time, usually half our sleeping time. And it is important. It's the restful bit, but we might move around a bit. Or, you know, from our body's point of view, sleep's quite active, and mentally it can be quite active as well, but it's still a really, really important part of how we are. And then light sleep is our muscles are still relaxed, but we might start getting our eyes moving backwards and forwards. And you've probably all heard of REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement sleep. And you get if you ever look at someone who's dreaming, if they've got their eyes shut, their eyeballs behind their eyelids will be moving from side to side. And it usually suggests that people are dreaming. And it occurs after each of these stages, and it tends to be more frequent towards morning. And I think that's something that's quite helpful to remember, is if you do wake up in the morning, sometimes you'll remember your dreams, and you're more likely to, because you're more in these 2 stages of REM sleep and light sleep. It's less likely to happen in the early part of the night. And the other thing that's important to remember is that some people just don't remember dreams. It's just the way they are, but it doesn't mean that they don't have them. Everyone dreams, because it seems to be quite important for our bodies and brains that we do have dreams, because I think I've always sort of thought about it as, in a way, our brain doing its bit of tidying up. Might not seem to make a lot of sense if, you know, you're dreaming about the alligator in the back garden in the pond that you don't have, but the brain's making sense of something. And I think it's quite important. Again, when research has stopped people dreaming, it can cause a lot of confusion for them, and psychologists can do quite strange experiments like that. So just thought it might be useful to look at the differences in sort of sleep patterns over time. So if you think starting off as a baby, hopefully getting to your telegram from the king. So babies do a lot of deep sleep. So that's the percentage of sleep. They spend a lot of time asleep, as you know, and we'll go into that in a minute. And they do less of this kind of being wakeful and the kind of light sleep. but deep sleep does decline as you get older. But you get more light sleep and you get more awake time. And this is really quite important because this is quite a natural phase that, this is what babies normally do. But, teenagers and those of us in our 40s, 50s and 60s are different. So a newborn baby can sleep up to 18 hours and it's across the 24-hour period because it's not 18 hours straight, as anyone that's looked after a small child or a small baby will know. And similar with a young child, they can sleep up to 12 hours at night, hopefully, but up to another 2 hours during the daytime naps. And then children up to probably somewhere just before puberty, but somewhere maybe around sort of 10 or 11, usually will need somewhere between 10 and 12 hours of sleep a night. But when you hit puberty and when you become a teenager, you still need a lot of sleep, but teenagers traditionally would prefer, if you left them alone, to go to bed late and get up later. And those of you who live with teenagers may have noticed that. And the other thing that's important to remember is these are averages. So there will be teenagers who do still relish getting up in the morning, but there will also be teenagers who really, really would prefer to go to bed at 3 in the morning and get up at 3 in the afternoon. But that isn't always completely feasible. When school's got to be gone to, college or work or whatever's got to be gone to. So again, as you can see, as you go through your lifespan as a young adult, your late teens, early 20s, and then coming into your 30s and 40s, and then coming probably around about your sort of late 60s to 70s, your amount of sleep that you need does come down a bit. And as you get older, you tend to sometimes have a few naps in terms of just managing your energy levels. And I think the important thing is, don't forget, these are averages. We're all different. But that's probably helps in terms of just thinking of what we might want to aim for. So what else can affect sleep? So stress can reduce the amount of deep sleep that you experience because it reduces some of the helpful hormones that you have in your body that kind of promote it. I think the other thing is, so for some people, tea, coffee and soft drinks, particularly those ones that have got caffeine in them, so the things like, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Red Bull, all those kind of things that will have caffeine in them, they can all disturb sleep. And for some people, large doses of caffeine can remain in the brain for sort of 9 to 15 hours. Now, we probably all know, I certainly do, a few people that seem to drink 20 cups of coffee a day and it has no difference, makes no difference to their sleeping pattern. They're probably very used to caffeine, so it doesn't have the same effect on them as it would on perhaps other people that are not so caffeine tolerant. So there's something that's quite important if you notice caffeine affecting you, or you feel that you could sleep better, is actually reducing the amount of tea and coffee that you drink, and maybe not drinking as much tea and coffee when you get, post lunchtime, post afternoon, because it can remain in the brain and it does reduce the amount of sleep. The other one they also suggest is don't eat too much chocolate at night. So sorry, I know a lot of people like that, but chocolate can also have an effect on deep sleep during the night, as can certain types of food. And that's because they have a particular type of chemical in them called tyrosine. So things like bacon and cured meats, sort of aged cheese, so like really mature cheddar or mature something else, blue cheese, some soft cheeses, and potatoes, tomatoes, chocolate, and red wine more than white wine. So, eating crisps, tomato flavored crisps with chocolate and red wine in the evening is probably not a great idea, especially if you're going to go straight to bed. But that said, we all make our choices with it. And maybe sometimes, it's okay to do that because you're having a good social time. But I think just be aware that these things can actually have an effect. And I think that leads us to alcohol, is that alcohol also blocks certain sleep hormones, and it can then reduce your dreaming and your deep sleep. And if you only get one type of sleep, say light sleep, that's not great in the long term either. But again, it's how we manage these things. I mentioned stress before, and nicotine as well. So nicotine is an incredibly powerful stimulant, irrespective of whether you get nicotine from vaping or you get it from cigarettes, and tobacco. it does stimulate your brain processing. And therefore it can definitely interrupt your sleep. So, I mean, I'm not here to go on about whether you should smoke, you shouldn't smoke. Those of you who do will know it's not healthy, but it's how you manage it in relation to sleep that it's important. And then the other thing that's been more recent is in our brains, we're kind of used to that when blue-green lights tend to be associated with daylight. So in our brains, if you see more blue and green light, the brain's going to think, oh, daytime, better do something. And therefore, you're less likely to kind of get yourself into a phrase or get the right, hormones going to help you go to sleep. And it's, it'd be so much better if LED lights and laptops, tablets, phones, and all the rest of it weren't blue, because they really have an impact on sleep. And that's why often we do sort of try and suggest to people that if you are looking at laptops and tablets, try and switch them off around about an hour or two before you go to bed, because of that blue light thing that's going on. Televisions are different. They have quite a bigger spectrum of color in them, so they don't have the same effect as the LED lights and laptops and tablets and phones. And the other thing, I think, just in terms of the food bit, is that it has been suggested that if you have a bigger meal at lunchtime than in the evening, that can actually have an impact on sleep. To be fair, it may not be practical for all of us. So I think it's just bearing these things in mind. And then, the main thing is to try and kind of optimize what you do in terms of making your sleep better. So healthy eating earlier in the day, we mentioned that. And so the other one that really helps is sunlight. A bit tricky in the UK, possibly a bit tricky in the Northwest or Manchester. Before I started living in Manchester, I lived in Glasgow, and certainly the further north you are, sunlight can be a bit tricky. So too few of us get enough natural light, which does, boost things like good hormones like, serotonin and estrogen, which is why sometimes taking vitamins can be helpful just to try and help that. I think the other thing that's also useful to think about is that the onset of sleep is triggered by a sort of dip in body temperature. So if you can manage to control the temperature of your bedroom or where you sleep to make sure it's comfortable, and it's, everyone's probably got their own particularly comfortable temperature, a bit like Goldilocks, not too hot, not too cold, but it's important to try and sort of the temperature in bedrooms is usually suggested to being at least 2 or 3 degrees lower than the room where you maybe spend most of your time or you're more active in. If that's the same room, if you can manage it to change the temperature when you go to bed, you're kind of you're changing your room, as it were, to say, this is my bedtime room now, rather than my watching telly, doing work type of room. If you can, a comfortable bed can actually reduce the amount of times that you move around in it. If you're sleeping somewhere uncomfortable, you can kind of move around. You can be tossing and turning, or you can feel really kind of uncomfortable. You'll move around a lot, even if you are asleep. So actually having a comfortable bed can reduce that by probably, 60%. And the other thing that I think I hadn't realized until I was actually looking at this is I hadn't realized, I know our heads are heavy, and all our heads are heavy, but I hadn't realized our head was actually about 20% of our body weight. So having a good pillow is pretty important, because if you think 20% of your body weight is at one end of your body and you're lying down, it would be useful in terms of making sure you're a bit more balanced, that your actual head's quite comfortable. So everyone's different on that one. All our postures are different, but again, it's making sure it's comfortable. So again, it's not too flat, it's not too high, it's not too soft, not too hard. Everyone's different. And the other thing that's also been suggested as helpful is if you can sleep on your back or your side, then that can actually make a difference as well, in terms of having calmer sleep and not moving around quite so much. And earplugs can reduce noise levels at night by up to 50%. They're not always comfortable. I've certainly tried them myself, and I prefer not to wear them. But sometimes if it's really noisy, it can be better to do it than not. because you do get a better night's sleep. And then the other thing is exercise. That again, I think helps us with our kind of daytime routines. If we get a bit of exercise, and if it's in the afternoon to the early evening, then it kind of stimulates our body, stimulates our hormones. We have some food, and then we can relax a bit into the night. Whereas actually, as I don't know how many of you do this, but I seem to spend a lot of time sitting in front of a screen these days. Not getting that exercise can be quite unhelpful if you don't have a kind of good sleeping pattern. So it's just a picture here, someone perhaps looking a bit sleepy. So what happens when sleep gets tricky? So insomnia is characterized by a difficulty getting to sleep, a difficulty maintaining sleep. So that's when you say maybe fall asleep, but you kind of wake up 1, 2 in the morning, or after a couple of hours, you might go back to sleep, then you wake up again, or you might wake up, say several hours before you normally would, or normally would have to. So for example, say you need to get up at 7 o'clock, early morning awakening is anything from sort of 4 or 5 o'clock onwards, where you're losing that time that you'd want to be asleep. Feeling that the sleep you've had is not refreshing. When you get into bed, you can't actually get off to sleep until after half an hour. To be sort of properly called or diagnosed as insomnia, the duration's usually for longer than a month, often longer, and it's usually at least 3 nights a week. Sometimes people's earlier experiences can have an impact that, if you've had particularly poor sleep patterns as a child or a young adult, then, like all things, those things can kind of come back to annoy us and create problems again. And I think, but there's different phases. So, it can be transient, in which case it's not, a problem that's going to go on for a length of time. So sometimes, say you've jet lag, or you've been ill, you've had a really bad cold, you can struggle with sleep, or something really exciting is about to happen. These can all affect us getting to sleep. Sometimes we can have short-term problems with sleep, which usually lasts maybe up to about 4 weeks. It's usually triggered by stress. So if you've got particularly difficult things to do at work, or you've got exams coming up, sometimes that can, stress does have an impact in getting off to sleep. And there are things you can do to manage that, which I'll talk about a little bit. And then you get chronic insomnia, which is longer term, usually longer than a month. And part of it is, once you get into this pattern, you've got to put quite a lot of effort into getting out of it. And that could be quite hard. And I think sleep disturbances, they're probably one of the most common things that affect people that have got sort of mental health problems, such as depression or anxiety. And probably about 10% of the adult population has persistent problems in getting to sleep or staying asleep. So, it has a massive impact. And, if you think about, if you've had a good night's sleep, the difference that makes, and when you've had a bad night's sleep, the difference that makes, and how you feel about yourself after both those events can be quite important. So, and the other thing I read was that a new baby typically results in between 400 to 750 hours lost sleep for the parents in the first year. I don't tell you that in advance, but it's usually worth it. But that's a lot of sleep to lose. Okay, so what can you do about it? I think one of the things that your body kind of wants a habit, it wants a good routine. So it's usually something about thinking, well, what time am I going to get up in the morning? A lot of us like a lie-in at the weekend, but if you're trying to change a habit, it's worth getting up at the same time every day. So say it's 8 o'clock. There's something about thinking, well, okay, I'm an adult, I probably need about 7.5 hours sleep. So I'll maybe try and get to bed about 11 o'clock. And then that, it gives me time to kind of properly wind down. But one of the things that's helpful is to think about a bedtime wind down routine. And that can be about turning your blue light machine off about 2 hours before you go to bed. Maybe try and watch something or read something relaxing before you go to bed. can have a milky drink or a warm drink, but make sure it's not caffeine in it. Avoid having a snack, and then get into bed and give it a go. The other thing that sometimes people find helpful is actually just, again, a couple of hours before you go to bed, is just to kind of run through the day and say, okay, that happened today, I've got to do that tomorrow, rather than getting into bed and thinking, oh, I've got to do that tomorrow, I forgot to buy this, I need to get milk tomorrow, there isn't enough milk for breakfast, which can be kind of not exactly winding down, but can be winding up a little bit. So those, oops, didn't mean to do that yet. So those are useful things to think about. The other thing is sleeping tablets don't work in the long term. They can make a difference for maybe a week or so, but I mean, often, as you'll know, most general practitioners and others are not keen to prescribe them because they don't work in the long term. Our bodies get used to them, so therefore they don't actually have an impact in sleep. But because the types of tablets that they are, our bodies get used to them and want them, you can sometimes create more problems than you're able to solve. But as a one-off or every so often, sometimes it can have an impact in just changing the routine, but they really, really aren't helpful. And if you can do all this stuff about changing your behavior, then that will probably be as effective over a few weeks. And the other thing is that if you can, rather than lying there tossing and turning saying, I can't get to sleep, I really need to get to sleep, it's probably better to get up. Because the more that we go round and round in circles about not being able to get to sleep, the more wound up we get. And maybe rather than tossing and turning, it's actually thinking about how do I restart my wind down routine. And when you're in bed, don't use the bed for anything other than sleep. The exception is sex. You don't just have to have sex in bed, but we're not saying you can't have sex in bed in terms of trying to improve your connection between bed and sleep. Don't use your laptops, tablets, or phones in bed. And the other thing about trying to sort of connect nighttime or bedtime and sleep is trying to avoid napping. So because you can feel so tired if you don't get any sleep, try and avoid doing sleep during the daytime. So no napping, even if you feel really tired, because in a way you're trying to retrain yourself into bed, sleep, rather than bed, sofa at 2 in the afternoon, half an hour sleep, and then trying to go to bed. And then some of the things you may have heard people say is, if sleep doesn't come within 15 minutes, get out of bed, give it another go, and go somewhere else or try and do something different, and then stay up until you feel sleepy. And sleepy tired. Feeling tired isn't the same as sleepiness. And anything you can do to kind of promote that kind of relaxing and wind down things is really, really helpful. So it can take, if you try and do this, it can take as much as 3 weeks to see any changes. Often, if you can look for this online, but and also Bury Healthy Minds and other sort of helpful places can support you in terms of monitoring your sleep, and sleep diaries can be really, really helpful. There's a thing called sleep efficiency, which we're not going to go into, but it's a way of actually working out how much time you spend in bed and what proportion of that time or what percentage of that time you actually spend asleep. And one of the ways of working on changing your sleep behavior is to try and improve that sleep efficiency. One of the things that's worth thinking is you're not aiming for 100%. You're aiming for high percentages, but 100% isn't that effective either, because it probably suggests you're not actually spending enough time trying to sleep. Okay. So, and I think this is probably got, I think, one more slide, but just see where else you can find help from. Learning mindfulness can help. There's websites, like the NHS has got websites, and there's different apps. So there's one that's been really heavily recommended by NICE, which stands for the National Institute of Care and Health Excellence, and does a lot of reviewing and recommending of both medication or different types of psychological approaches. And they reviewed something called Sleepio. It's actually been paid for by the Scottish government, and some NHS regions, I think in London and the southeast, have actually paid for it for people, because there's a lot of good evidence about how helpful it is. But sadly, we haven't got access to it in the northwest. But something like that can be helpful. And there are NHS sites which actually look at some of these apps and will review them for you, because apps are apps, and there's hundreds of them out there, so it's quite tricky to know what's good and what isn't. So there we go. Thank you. That's me. So
thank you very much for that. That was really interesting.
Did you want the next slide, Charlotte, before I stop sharing?
Okay, yeah, so that's our contact information. Fabulous. They'll get that quite a few times. Thanks, Gita.
Right, I'll stop sharing. Thanks.
That was really interesting. Thank you for that. Didn't know so much stuff could interfere with your sleep. Sat here having like mini epiphanies, like, oh, well, maybe it's that then. Oh, haha. Does anybody have any questions before we move on to Big?
I was just going to ask a question. Hi, it's Ruth. So sometimes when I try to use these mindfulness apps, so one of these kind of relaxing body scans or something when I'm trying to get sleep, but what I've noticed is that my mind tends to jump all over the place more. Whereas if I try to listen to something interesting that I want to listen to, inevitably I can go off to sleep. But of course, the problem is I don't actually get to hear the thing I wanted to hear. And I wondered, was there any kind of reason for that? Whether Gita knew, was it the attempt to focus and then the tiredness seems to kind of push on through that? I don't know. I'm just curious about that.
Simple answer is I don't quite know. I don't exactly know. My speculation would be that I think for the mindfulness, because you're focusing on your attention being in the one place, and that as a task in itself, unless you're particularly good at mindfulness, can take you jumping off all over the place, and you've got to refocus. Whereas which can happen with a body scan, whereas sometimes with the mindfulness, the 3 breaths task can be actually easier, where you actually just think about breathing in and breathing out and focusing on the breath rather than focusing on all body scan aspects. So I think it depends which one you use. I think if people don't have problems sleeping, that, we don't, I read in bed, but I don't have any problems getting off to sleep. But if I'm seeing someone who has problems getting off to sleep, I'll say, well, I don't think you should be reading in bed until we sort this out. So I think it is that thing about what works for one person doesn't always work for another person.
Thanks.
Oh, that's really interesting, because I like watch TV. I'll have TV in the background on a sleep timer, so I don't really have to think, and it takes my attention. So that's interesting. Right, should we pass over to you, Nicola? Big.
Hi.
Hi.
No, it's really sorry, it was really quiet. That was really interesting, Gita. I learned a lot there for like my personal self. I'm a really poor sleeper.
Glad it was helpful. So
yeah, it was really, really helpful. I'm a poor sleeper myself, and I do everything wrong. I tell people what to do or advise them, but then I'm on my phone, or I'm thinking I'll just check this, or so I'm going to follow a lot of your guidelines there. Give it a go. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always harder to do as I say rather than do as I should do kind of thing. So
definitely. And like Charlotte said, the TV, I think I'll go to bed, relax a little bit before I know it, the telly's on and it's 2 a.m. So yeah, I'm going to take a lot from what you've just said. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Right, so yeah, I'm Nicola from Big, and this is Brett. So I'll just tell you a little bit about who we are. So Big's also known as Bury Involvement Group, and we're a charity for people over 18. No referrals required. We run groups, and you can just turn up to as many groups as you want. Big was originally run just by volunteers. We do have paid staff now, but volunteers are still the core of Big. And they all have lived experience of mental health conditions, which really helps. Although we're based in Bury, we do take people from anywhere. So, we go up to the wards at Fairfield, and people are actually on the wards. We tell them about our services, and they've often been moved from Oldham and Rochdale, but they can still come to our groups. so which is good. We have just expanded our groups. We always had a Monday, Tuesday and Friday, but now we've been lucky enough to do a Wednesday, Thursday. So we run 5 days a week now, which is absolutely brilliant. And at most of the groups, we have a crisis member. So someone that sort of works for our crisis team, which I do, will be at the group. So God forbid someone turned up in crisis, there should always be someone there that can help them. So it is a really good service. So, but Brett, I'll just tell you a little bit about our history now, will you, Brett?
Yeah, I was just going to say in terms of what the doctor was talking about in terms of building a routine. I found that key for myself. You know, I had issues with sleep for many, many years, and I fell into the trap of go see a GP, beg for sleeping medication, take them until they ran out, then go try and get some more. And it led to some quite self-destructive behaviour. You know, they're meant to be taken in the short term, but I did not see it like that, and it can become quite harmful. So the groups that we run at Big can allow people to get into a routine. Some are ran at the day, some are in the night. So it's just to give some people a bit of stability. They're not all mental health focused. Some, like on Friday, is a social interaction group. People don't have to talk about how they're feeling, what they're experiencing, or what they're diagnosed with. So, you know, we do get a lot of people with sleep issues and diagnosed conditions, but it's just one of those things where, like you say, some self-care, a good routine really is key. Although maybe I shouldn't go into it, the medication road I found really slippery. And
we've experienced it with users, haven't we?
Yes, I've experienced it personally. I've experienced it with service users. It didn't fix it for me. What fixed it for me was a change in habits. Was, like you say, setting an alarm in the morning, getting up for 7:30, not napping during the day, having a set bedtime routine. So I know, like, I'm going to brush my teeth, I'm going to calm down, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to go to my bedroom where I don't have a TV in it anymore. The phone is under the pillow, so I can't hear it. It is my alarm, but I don't look at it. And all the lights are off. It's pitch black I have a blackout blind, so there's no light coming. And I do use earplugs. And I found them to be an absolute game changer. Yeah, they really work. They might pop out when I roll around, because inevitably I will roll around in my sleep. I've just always been like that, but at least now I get my 7 to 8 hours, which is really good.
Yeah, I think we notice a change in our service users, don't you know, if they're having sleep problems, we see them dip a little bit, and normally when you get to the bottom of it, they're not sleeping, and then they're saying they start being irritable with the family, they're having arguments with the family, they're not eating properly, and when you get to the core of it, a lot of it is sort of lack of sleep, but they all want the quick fix, like we all do, don't we? And I think you've got to work on yourself, and I think that's something we need to get through to people, that it's not a quick fix. You're not going to go from not sleeping to, you've got to work, haven't you?
Yeah.
So, sorry, Brett, go on.
No, it's okay. So yeah, Big's had a short but quite proud history, and we established in 2007. And we function as an independent ear and a sounding board and a voice for local people who use mental health services. So in 2012, we secured funding which enabled us to expand our service and provide a range of free and accessible peer support groups like we just mentioned. Now, if anyone wanted to get some information about Big, if you just put Bury Involvement Group in Google and search, you can pull up our website. Have a full list of the groups, the days we run. So some are like crisis groups where people sit in a circle and be quite open about how they feel. Might not need to, you don't have to share, but after a while, it obviously helps. Problem shared, problem halved. Tuesdays we have someone coming in maybe with a life experience they want to talk about, condition, or maybe a consultant who'd like to chat, quite like yourself, which is really good educational session. There's also in Bury, we have something called the Getting Helpline. If someone's really struggling, now they can give this number a call. So it's the Getting Helpline, and their number's 0161 464 3679, and they're open Monday to Saturday, 8 AM till 8 PM. Now, if anyone's struggling, you can give them a call, and they'll possibly, if they feel it's right, they'll refer you to a crisis team, and that might be Big's crisis team. And I'd say for anyone who feel like they're struggling and things are just a bit too much, whether it's sleep or anything else in their lives, just to reach out and give them a call. Either turn up to a group or give the Getting Helpline a call.
Yeah, they've got a website as well, there, Brett.
Yeah.
If they don't want to speak over the phone, they'd rather.
Yeah, the website is through www.earlybreak.co.uk/Getting Helpline. And yeah, I'd just say it's a really good set. It's free. And from it you can get one-to-one counselling sessions
very quickly as well. The wait is like a matter of a couple of weeks, which, as you know yourself, for support and help, that's amazing. I had a lady referred in, and within I think 7-8 days she was seen. We offer daytime and evening, so if people are working or childcare issues, we can see people in the evening as well, up to, I think the last appointment is 10 PM. So it runs quite late into the evening.
Yeah. And with the Getting Helpline as well, Big can only offer help to people 18 years plus. The Getting Helpline is open to anyone of any age. CAMHS, I know, and Healthy Minds is a massive long waiting list, and we have people crying out for young adults and youngsters who need help. So the Getting Helpline can help people who are under the age of 18 as well if they're really struggling. And it's just a service that's needed at the moment. Yeah, I think that's really that.
Yeah. So I think that's us really. That's sort of telling you a little bit about Big. The website is up and running, and it's being improved all the time at the moment, so just keep an eye on it. There is lots of things coming, isn't there?
Yeah, and if anyone is looking to get involved, I mean, I'm the volunteer coordinator, and what can really help people in life is just have, I don't want to sound a bit like that, but like a purpose, just something to do, and giving back is something that you can do for free, and it's something helping others can really help yourself. And if anyone wanted to volunteer and offer their time at any of the groups and share their lived experience to better help others, they always can do, because we find that, in a professional setting, sometimes you might see your psychologist or your psychiatrist once every few months, whereas in a volunteer setting at a group like Big, you're going to see the same people week after week after week. You can build a rapport and a trust. And so if you've got similar lived experiences, you might be able to offer a shared experience which can really help someone who's struggling. And that's really important to me and Big.
Yeah, that's how I started. My background is anxiety and depression. I was a teaching assistant. Things got too much. I gave up my job, became a volunteer, became a service user, sorry, became a volunteer, and now I'm actually paid crisis staff. I went and did my counselling. So it really helped me at day one, and I'll never forget that. So each person that comes through the door, I want to help them as much as I was helped. So yeah, so thank you very much.
Yeah. I wonder if anyone has any questions or anything they'd like to ask us while we're on.
No, that was really interesting, the Getting Helpline as well. It's nice to know it's open to everyone, because like you said, yeah, young people are really screaming out with regards to accessing services at the moment. Bless them, it's not very easy, is it? Oh, thank you very, very much for that. Does anybody have any questions before I quickly go over the services in Bury?
It's Ruth again. Sorry, I put something in the chat, but only just now, so I'll just ask it. Brett, I was wondering if there's somebody I know who would be quite keen, a youngish male who'd be quite keen to probably get involved and volunteer. And do you have, like a number he could text or call? And also, is there a similar kind of, if somebody particularly would want to talk, maybe talk to a woman, is there a I suppose they can ask for that if they're going to have an appointment or something with you, or a meeting. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we'll start. I'll do the second one. If someone wanted to come and speak to someone of a particular gender, I'd respect that decision. That's everyone's individual choice. The groups are mixed, in terms of the sexes. But if someone really did want to speak to someone of a particular gender, usually of a group, it would not be an issue at all. We have usually a little quiet side to a group, and we usually have on a session mix the volunteers generally. So like tonight is going to be myself, Nick, and Maggie.
What I would say is, if they was intending to come to group and they really wanted to speak on a one-to-one basis, wouldn't be an issue. What they could do is ring the number on the website and they would be told who's actually attending group.
Right.
So
that's
they
helpful.
would, so they would know if it was like male or female. But as a rule, there tends to be a mixture of staff, don't there?
And the website is buryinvolvementgroup.org.
Great.
And that's got our number, our emails on there. And this chap who, if you wanted to get involved, you could just email me on. It's a bit of a long email, so please forgive me.
No, go on, I've got a pen.
It's volunteer coordinator at buryinvolvementgroup.org.
Group.org. Yeah, that's great.
Just can drop me an email anytime. More than happy to discuss. What I'd probably say is they could just pop to one of the sessions just to see what it's like and what it's about, and we can have a chat. And
be great.
If you'd like to do that, then
it's a very simple process, isn't it? It's not daunting or anything.
It's great. It's great. Yeah, and somebody who's used Healthy Minds, but has only had the kind of 5 sessions or whatever, and it sort of feels a bit like it's tip of the iceberg, but has really found it useful and also could be very helpful to other people. Okay.
See, that's the thing. Sorry. Our crisis support. So, if he felt that the Healthy Minds wasn't quite enough, it could always self-refer to our crisis team, and it's you get offered an initial 6 visits. However, after 6 visits, if more are needed, that isn't an issue.
Great.
So if you did find Healthy Minds sort of did help, we can offer a similar thing, a talking therapy.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, let me just. Right slides. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go through some of the different mental health services that are available in Bury at the moment. Things to remember, not all services work in the same way, so this is about finding the services that works well for you. It's okay to feel overwhelmed when exploring your options. Don't let this put you off. There are quite a few services, but again, they all work in different ways and you can get in communication with them in different ways. So it's about being mindful of that. And we are here if you'd like to discuss your options better. We can do that through email. We can do that through social media. We can do that on the phone. It's completely up to you how you contact us, but we will be here and available with the information. And you matter and your mental health matters too. So that's what we need to remember. So we have the Bury Getting Helpline, which was mentioned previously. All age emotional support, and it can be self-referrals as well. So that is a good one because, as we know, sometimes you just feel motivated to get the help, don't you? And it's nice to get action at that point. We've got Healthy Minds, which is adult talking therapy. Self-referrals are made. I will say that it's a bit of a wait as far as I'm aware at the moment. Excuse me. And we have CAMHS, which is for young people up to 16. Referrals for that do have to be made through the GP, so you will have to make an appointment with your doctor to discuss CAMHS. We've got Closing the Gap at Early Break, which is low-level emotional support for 16 to 25-year-olds. And again, self-referrals can be made. So that would be through the Early Break website. Again, you can feel free to contact us, or it is on the slide there. We have the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service, which again is a self-referral thing online. This is obviously a very specialist kind of support, people facing bereavement and loss. We have the digital mental health support. So these are places like Kooth, Silver Cloud, Living Life to the Full, that you can make referrals to online, but you engage with them online. So if you're not comfortable on the phone, you're not comfortable face to face, you could be texting, IMing, you know, different generations apparently like different types of things as well. So it's about inclusion for everybody. We've got the Mental Health Crisis Helpline, which is exactly what it says on the tin. So it's somebody that you can phone at any time if you're feeling in a place of crisis. We have the Bury Peer-led crisis service. So that is generally referred through different projects and different places. I don't know if Big can do that, but as far as we're aware, it's different services that we need to refer through from different pathways. So the Access to Crisis service is a referral through approved pathways and services only, so that's through your GP. The Urgent Emergency Care by appointment only. This is again referral, so this would be something that your GP would send you to if you showed up at your GP practice in crisis. We have the ADAB. This is supporting Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. Obviously, again, it's a very specialist kind of support. And we have Andy's Man's Club, men's peer support group. Can't actually big them up enough, really, to be fair. They're doing a lot of really good work around for men and their mental health at the moment. We have Big in Mental Health, which we've had a lovely talk from today. Thanks, guys. The Bury Adult Learning, that's a mental wellbeing course that they do. So it's about mindfulness and again, different techniques that, for example, Gita were going on about. Directions for Men, peer support group, very similar to Andy's Man Club in its mission to help and support men with their mental health, a bit smaller. We've got Early Break, which is for children and young people also. Gupshup Corner, which is a support group for women, which again can be accessed online. Help Yourself to Wellbeing, that is actually a 7-week course again around wellbeing. As far as I'm aware, this is face-to-face, it's not remote at the moment. We've got Rami Men, which is again a peer support group for men and women. I think it originally started as one, again, just to support for men, but their catchment has grown, shall we say. And we have the BAME project as well. So that's mental and physical wellbeing support for Black and minorities. Oh, and we have more. The Big Fernando, which is support group for suicide loss, which is very specific support again. The Creative Living Centre, which has a range of different supports. There's the Sunnywood Project, which is wellbeing support for children and adults. Uplift Unite, which is support and activities for good mental health. Wellness for Women is for young ladies 16 to 25. And Women of Worth, so that's a safe support for women that have maybe faced domestic violence or other challenges. So there was a lot there and a lot of different services to mention, to put all the contact details for all of them on the slides. But again, if you'd like to call us, you can phone us 01612536300. We also have a WhatsApp, which we're happy for you to send a text message through to, or you can email us, Twitter us, Facebook us, YouTube us, or send a request through the website. And we can send you all the information on all the services that you could need. Just get in touch and we will happily do that. We can support you as a Healthwatch however you please. We can give you the information and then forget we spoke to you if that's what you prefer, or we can help you with the application process and the self-referral. It's completely up to you and what is best for you. So that is it from me. Does anyone have any questions? No? All right then, guys. Well, thank you very much for your time today. It was